Alright, today's video we're going to do the Epic of Gilgamesh. Just finished this thing last night. It's a pretty quick read. I got a copy of it here. I have no idea who published this. Hungary Point Press from Wabasha, Minnesota. Epic of Gilgamesh. I just got this off of Amazon. And it's kind of an interesting book because it's annotated with some of the comments on where the source tablets came from. All the stuff was written down on like cuneiform tablets across the Akkadians and the Sumerians civilizations, and so it sometimes shows you where the text is illegible, nobody knows what it says, or where it had to be spliced together from multiple original sources. So yeah, and apparently a bunch of original source material for Epic of Gilgamesh got looted and destroyed in the chaos that ensued the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003 as well. So the more you know, right? So we'll get into it and talk about what the whole story is all about. And we'll meet an old familiar character in there. So first the book starts off with Gilgamesh. He's an awesome king. He lives in Uruk, which is a city that has a really nice wall. It's made of, it's got mud bricks that are baked in the sun, which is highly impressive. Gilgamesh likes to point out that only the original 7 people who brought civilization to mankind could have built such a wonderful wall, but he built that wall. Gilgamesh is generally just like a unmatched warrior. He likes to play some form of ancient field hockey a lot, and basically has become a pest because there's nobody to keep him in line. Nobody is his equal, so he spends his time. Anyone who's got bigger arms than him, like if you look jacked, he will just want to like fight you and wrestle you or possibly kill you. Anyone who gets married, he will come to your house at night and sleep with your new wife on that night, and sometimes never give her back. Sometimes he just kidnaps people's wives and he just indefinitely keeps them. And then when he's not doing all that crazy stuff, he's getting drunk, causing trouble, and generally challenging all the men of the town to play field hockey, in which he promptly beats them up and, dunks on them and then says, "In your face." Yeah. So people are like, "Gilgamesh, you're great, but you're kind of a lot to deal with, man." And so then the ancient Mesopotamian gods, they create a man to basically be someone to keep Gilgamesh in check. And that's a guy named Enkidu. So they form him out of clay or something like that, and then they chuck him down to earth. And he lands in the wilderness, and he's known to be a hairy, naked dude who is just running around living with the animals. And he hunts with animals, and he goes to drink with like cattle and stuff like that. One day a hunter has been running into him out in the wilderness, and he's scared of him because he's a formidable wild man. So he goes to the temple and he says, "Hey, I've got a problem with this wild man. What can we do?" And they say, "Well, bring with you the temple prostitute, and she can get him in line. So go ahead and do that." The hunter takes her out, and they go down to this watering hole, and they wait 3 days before the animals show up, and then sure enough, Enkidu comes out, and he starts drinking the water with the animals. And then the hunter is like, he says to the lady, "Hey, get out there and go like show him your stuff. Go take your clothes off and show him what you got. So she goes and does it, and then Enkidu, he's interested and spends 7 days rather interested with this lady. And after that, he's like, whew, all right, that was awesome. And he goes to try to hang out with his animal friends again, but they don't like him anymore. It mentions that she had made him bathe, so he's lost his like funky wild man smell, but also there's a lot of this stuff is rather above my head, but as far as I understand, there's a lot of like ancient mythology around feminine energy and the desire to have a mate as civilizing wild mankind. So there's probably some sort of symbolic thing there about females civilizing men. And Enkidu, he can't hang out with his animal buddies anymore, so he's like, what am I supposed to do? They're like, well, come back to the city with us. So they take him back, and then there's this problem going on. You know, I'd mentioned it before, but Gilgamesh has been stealing all of the newlywed brides, and it's really making people pretty irritated. So when Enkidu comes back, they ask him to help out with that situation, and Gilgamesh is walking up to the house at night, newlywed couple, and he sees Enkidu leaning in the doorway, just waiting for him, and he's like, "Get out of my way, dude!" And Enkidu's like, "No." And then Gilgamesh notices, he's like, "You got pretty jacked arms, bro. Let's fight." So they wrestle, and it's not clear, at least, so this is coming from the notations on the translation. So it's not exactly clear in translation who wins the wrestling match. Gilgamesh is crying because he lost the wrestling match. This is the theory, at least. He starts crying, and he's really sad that he's met a match in wrestling. And Enkidu starts crying because he thinks that Gilgamesh is such a great and awesome man. Okay, and presumably, if it was really Enkidu who won the wrestling match, then Enkidu is basically crying because he feels bad for hurting Gilgamesh's feelings. That's kind of the way that seems to play out. That being said, there might be other interpretations of that. It doesn't really matter anyways, because after they cry, they hug it out, and then they become best friends. And Gilgamesh is like, I'm going to love you like a husband loves a wife. It's like, okay. And he's like, I am going to take you home to mama, and you're going to be my brother and my best friend forever. And Enkidu's like, yeah, let's do this. So they become best friends, and they have a really great time. One day, a flood comes down, and the city is made of mud bricks. They say that there's a bunch of bodies being found in the flood river. So people are drowning. It's eroding their civilization, literally. They've got to do something about it. And so Gilgamesh is like, we need to get some wood. You know? We should get some wood. Well, they have to go get wood from a mountain where cedar trees grow. And everyone warns them, like, there is a sort of like a forest guardian mythical beast man thing called Umbaba. Gilgamesh says, don't worry about it, man. Listen, we'll either get cedar and save the city, or we'll die in battle as heroes and have great renown. They mentioned that, the braided rope is the strongest of ropes, and so if Gilgamesh and Enkidu work together, they can defeat Umbaba. And they also mentioned that you should make Enkidu walk in front of you on the trail. Because he knows the forest really well. But also, Umbaba is known to breathe fire. So that kind of just is like, use Enkidu as a human shield. They go on the journey, and as they're approaching the forest, every night, Gilgamesh has a really bad dream of the mountain appears formidable before them, and it like falls down upon them and crushes them and destroys them. And he wakes up all like in a cold sweat. He tells Enkidu about the dream. He's like, "Man, I had a terrible dream about us like dying on the mountain." And then Enkidu says, "I know what that dream means. That means you're gonna kill Mbaba. That's definitely what that means." I don't know if he's sincere in that belief, or if he's just trying to boost Gilgamesh's courage or what, but I found that part quite humorous. They get to the forest, and there's this gate that was built by people a long time ago, and no one knows why. It's a wooden gate that was made out of the cedar. And they're like, "We don't have the key to the gate." But luckily Enkidu pushes the door and it opens. So, no problem. However, when he pushes the door open, he gets the sickness. He gets the forest disease or whatever, which might have just been him being scared. Because he's like, "Oh, as soon as I pushed that door, all the strength left my arm." And then they're walking along and he's getting weaker and weaker and he has to lay down. He's like, "Oh man, I'm really weak." Gilgamesh is worried for his friend, so he goes deeper into the forest to find medicinal herbs, and he's seeing the tracks of Umbaba, and he's trying to avoid Umbaba, but he definitely sees the tracks of Umbaba as he's going through the forest. And he finds these medicinal herbs, and he goes back to Enkidu and rubs the herbs all over him, and Enkidu is like instantly better. Whew! Man, I was feeling really weak, but now I'm feeling great that you've rubbed leaves over me. So they're like, "All right, let's do this. Let's go kill Umbaba." And Umbaba starts taunting them from the forest, and he breathes fire out at them, and they have to duck down, and it's withering away all of the plant life. And Enkidu says, "Hey, we should get him now, because if he goes deeper in the forest, he's going to regain his 7 deadly powers. We should get him right now because he's just trying to scare us off. He's bluffing." So they chase him through the forest, and they go deeper and deeper into the forest, and then it's dusk. The sun is going down, and they have just basically allowed Umbaba to go back into the center of the forest where he's at full strength. Not a great plan. But whatever. They battle it out. Umbaba is like breathing fire at them. He's jumping out of the bushes and like attacking them. Gilgamesh has the upper hand. And Umbaba is making offers to him. He's kind of like tempting him. "Hey, let me live, and I will, give you all this cedar. You can make a roof for your house with this cedar wood, and even that, I'll grant you my powers and guardianship of the forest if you just let me survive." So he's kind of begging for his life, but when it's not working out, he does a final throw at Enkidu, and Enkidu's like, "Kill him, kill him," and Gilgamesh is like thinking about the offer. Anyways, Enkidu gets knocked out, and then Gilgamesh is like, "Nah, gotta stick with my homie," and he kills Umbaba. And then he wakes up Enkidu later. He's like, "Hey man, we did it." They drag back a bunch of cedar trees, and they're big heroes. They've brought wood to the civilization, which was a pretty big deal for them in Uruk. So Enkidu and Gilgamesh are walking along, and they see this halub tree, and it's this giant tree that has all sorts of birds living in it, and it was planted by the goddess Ishtar at the beginning of the earth, and it's been growing there for all of time, I guess. It's her favorite tree, and Gilgamesh is looking at it, and he's like, "I want to make some field hockey gear out of this tree." So it's the what is it? The puku and the meku, which are stick and hoop. So he kind of justifies this to himself, and he's a great warrior, so he just like, hiya! Karate chops it or whatever, and rips the tree out by its roots. This opens up a hole in the earth all the way down to the netherworld, where the souls of the dead are. Then the tree just kind of comically falls down the hole into the netherworld. I'm going to just read a little part of this because this is so funny. Gilgamesh lamented, "What could I do now to make my puku and meku? The woodworker will not go down there for me, or his wife will be angry with me. His daughter will be angry with me. Then his wife must be my wife, and his daughter must be my little sister." Enkidu said, "Gilgamesh, my brother, do not be sad. Do not cry this way. I will go down and bring up your puku and your meku." Gilgamesh warned Enkidu, "If you go down to the earth, you must follow my instructions. You must not wear clothes that make you stand out. You must not wear perfume, or they will smell you and gather around you. Do not startle them. Do not threaten them, or else the ghosts will collect you like flies. Do not wear shoes. Walk softly and make no noise. If you see them, you must not kiss the wife you love. You must not hit the wife you hate. You must not kiss the son you love, and you must not hit the son that you hate. For the earth's outcry will seize you. She who sleeps and sleeps, the mother of Ninazu, who forever sleeps, whose garments loose about her shoulders and show her breasts, which are like peaches, not the pendulous udders of old women." Enkidu did not follow his friend's instructions. Okay, he put on a clean garment, and so they recognized him at once as a stranger. He made too much noise because he wore his shoes. He was anointed with perfumed oil from an ointment jar, and so they gathered at the smell of him. He tossed a stick down in the darkness to see what it might hit, and it hit them, so they went after him. He threatened them with a club off the tree, and they flew around him like bats. When he saw her, he kissed the wife he loved, and he hit the wife he hated. When he saw him, he kissed the son he loved, and he hit the son that he hated. And the earth's outcry seized him, because she who sleeps and sleeps, the mother of Ninanzu, who sleeps forever, awoke. And when Enkidu tried to climb back up again, it was not the judge of the dead, Namtar, who stopped him, and it was not the demonic Asaku who chased him and held him back. The earth itself seized him. I just love that part because it's so funny that Gilgamesh gives him all this advice on how to avoid the ghosts attacking him, and then Enkidu literally does the opposite of everything that he says. And then eventually they kind of pray to the gods of the sky, and one of them calls up their homie in the underworld, and they're like, can you let Enkidu go, please? Gilgamesh is annoying us. And they open up a portal and set him free. Ishtar, the goddess, comes down to Gilgamesh, and she wants to make him her husband. And Gilgamesh basically just owns her, and is like, what about all these other dudes that you've made your husband? And, like, they've all met a terrible, horrible fate. I think I'll pass. So Ishtar gets really upset, and she cries up to her dad and is like, Gilgamesh was mean to me. He talked about my ex-boyfriends. And the god is like, well, what do you want me to do about it? And she says, well, I want to take out the bowl of heaven and send it down to cause chaos on Earth and kill Gilgamesh, please. So she releases this mythical beast upon the Earth, and it is like tearing open giant fissures in the earth, and hundreds of people are falling in and dying. It's causing all this terrible chaos. Enkidu and Gilgamesh suit up. They're like, let's go. And it was actually very easy for them. Enkidu just grabs the bull by its horns and holds it, and then Gilgamesh stabs it with a sword, and they kill the bull of heaven. In a series of dreams, Enkidu and Gilgamesh realize that Enkidu has been basically given a death sentence by the gods. They become sick. And then he's really sad about it, and he tells Gilgamesh to remember him, and he dies. Gilgamesh is just wrecked by this. He's completely wrecked. He goes and kind of like forsakes his kingship. He wanders around. He intentionally doesn't take care of himself. He lets himself get all haggard and messed up. He's hunting wild animals and just wearing their skins. Kind of taking on an Enkidu like life. He's just living in the wilderness, wandering around, and he's really distraught about the thought of death because he realizes Enkidu was my brother and he was a lot like me, and he died. It means I'm gonna die, and that sucks. That's not epic. So he goes around on this journey, and he's trying to seek out what he says is the one man who hasn't died. And I mean, obviously there's some grammatical goofiness there, but there's this guy who's been alive for a long, long time, and he's basically Noah. All right, they call him the Old One. He's got a weird name like Utpatnanesham or something like that. I don't know how to say it. I'm just gonna call him the Old One or Noah because he is Noah. So Gilgamesh travels. He finds where the sun goes down in a cave at night, and he follows through the sun cave for 14 hours through the darkness, and he finally comes out on the end of a coastline. It's the edge of the world, and there is a cosmic barmaid with a cosmic bar chilling at the edge of the world. And when he approaches, he looks all haggard and like a homeless vagrant, and so she locks the door and won't let him in. He's like, "Hey, let me in. I'm Gilgamesh." And she's like, "You are not a king. You are like a hobo." She tells him basically that there is a guy who's lived forever. He lives out on an island in the ocean, right by the edge of the world, and you can't really cross the waters. The waters of death are in the way. So if the water touches you, you're going to die. But he has a boatman who comes out to the land and kind of gets some stuff for him and comes back, so go find him. Gilgamesh is going up to meet the boatman, Ur-Shanabi. And Ur-Shanabi sees him coming, and so he sets an ambush. And he comes up behind Gilgamesh and tries to kill him with an axe. But Gilgamesh just beats him up and ties his hands behind his back. And then he's so mad that he smashes all of his stuff. And he said that he's got these weird stone things. Gilgamesh doesn't know what they are. He smashes them all. And then he almost smashes the boat, but he stops for a second. He's like, "Wait, I need the boat." So then he goes to talk to the boatman, and the boatman, Ur-Shanabi, is like, "Well, all those stone things that you destroyed, those are actually tools of some sort. I don't know if they're magic omens or if they're actual mechanical tools or whatever, but those are the things that allow us to cross the waters of death, and you've destroyed them. So we're in a bad situation, but we could get there if you're able to bring us 300 wooden poles for, like, I don't know, ferryman poles." So Gilgamesh is like, "I can do that." And he goes and chops down 300 trees. Seems unnecessary, but he makes a pole from each tree, and they've got 300 of them. And so the boatman is like, "All right, let's go. Here's what we do. You have to use the pole to push off in the water, but once you push off with the pole, you just let it go. Do not draw it out of the water, because if you splash any of the water and it touches you, you're going to die." So they use all 300 poles, and they run out of poles. And then they're just coasting along on their momentum. And luckily, they start to approach the shoreline. So when they get there, Um, Gilgamesh says, "Hey, you're the old one. You know, you've been alive for got to be thousands of years, and yet look at your arms, bro. You're almost as jacked as I am." He says, "It makes me want to fight you." And so Noah's like, "Yeah, well, I don't know, man." He's trying to basically like get Gilgamesh to go away. He doesn't really like Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh says, "Listen, I need to know how you've stayed alive so long." And Noah tells him, "I'll tell you the story, but nobody else knows this. And this is how I came to have immortality. There was a city along the river a long time ago, and the god Elil, something like that, got irritated with mankind. He couldn't sleep. Mankind was too noisy. Mankind was too noisy, and he could not sleep. So he decided he was going to kill all of humanity with a flood. But luckily, one of the gods was favorable towards me. He was promised not to tell any of the humans the plan, but he made a little loophole by telling it to the walls of my house, and then I was able to overhear what the plan was. So he told me to sell my house, get out of the city, go down by the shoreline, and build a giant boat and take upon it all manner of living things so that they could be preserved in the flood. And he says that he did it. And after the flood comes, it kills almost everybody. And then Enlil comes over and sees that the boat is there, and he's like, "What the heck? Who told this guy? We're supposed to kill all of humanity." And they said, he had a dream about it. He figured it out from a dream. It's not anyone's fault. They made a council and decided, you know what? For surviving the flood, we're going to grant you and your wife immortality. And so the Council of the Gods granted them immortality and sent them to live on an island on the edge of the world. Noah ends the story. He's like, "Yeah, dude, that's what happened. So I can't really recreate that situation for you. You're going to die. So just enjoy your life and live like anybody else." And Gilgamesh is like, "That's not acceptable. We need to figure something out." So Noah says, "All right, even though I can't help you, if you want to even take the first step, stay awake for 7 days. 6 days and 7 nights. I think is what he tells him specifically. I don't know what the significance of that. There's got to be some kind of like biblical, ancient, mythological reason for that. I think the flood was 6 days and 7 nights before Noah released his doves and stuff, and like birds were flying away and not coming back, and things like that. It's 7-day creation. There's probably something to do with 7, which is like the holy number, and if you're looking into like weird numerology stuff. I don't know. That's for somebody else than me. I just know the story. Anyways, he tells Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights, and Gilgamesh says, "No problem, dude." And he sits down and immediately falls asleep. And so Noah tells his wife, "Bake a loaf of bread every day and put it next to Gilgamesh. And we'll see how long till he wakes up." So when Gilgamesh wakes up, he's like, "Oh man, what happened?" And Noah said, You fell asleep." And Gilgamesh is like, No, I didn't." "No way, man. I didn't fall asleep." And then Noah's like, "Well, take a look. There is like a loaf of bread that is completely rotten and nasty. There's a loaf of bread that's turned black. There's a loaf of bread covered in mold. There's a loaf of bread that's going bad. Here's one that's dried out and crusty. You know, there's another one that's I don't know. There was another one in there too. And then finally, my wife is bringing you a fresh loaf today. So there's 7. You've been asleep 7 days, dude." And Gilgamesh is like, "What? Me? Nah. No, I could. This whole time, Gilgamesh has been a big. He's just like a big baby. He fails the test, and then he has to go home. And then Noah's wife says, tell him about the plant thing. And Noah's like, do we do we have to? She's like, yeah, tell him. So he says, all right, well, there is this plant that is known to give you immortality, but it is in the bottom of the waters that surround the earth, and it's a secret about where it is. And even the text then says, like, it's a secret. It's not for us to know where that is. Okay, but Noah tells Gilgamesh about it. And then Noah also says to his boatman, he says, you are fired, dude. You're banished from my island. You brought Gilgamesh here. You suck. You're fired from your job. Don't ever come back. Get out of here. Take Gilgamesh with you. So they leave and go on the adventure to find the plant of life together. Gilgamesh ties rocks to his feet and is like, I'm going down, deuces. And he jumps into the water and he sinks down to the bottom of the depths. Now, the ancient Mesopotamian peoples, they had concepts of two primordial, like, originator gods. There was Apsu, who is the creator of life, representing fresh water, and there's Tiamat, representing seawater, who is like primordial chaos. And so those waters, they actually even created the sky gods, and all of, obviously, the freshwater guy begets all of the living creatures. Gilgamesh sinks down into the Apsu, and down there is this plant at the bottom of the ocean, and it will prick your fingers, apparently, or like poke you. It's very pokey. It's known to be pokey, and it pokes Gilgamesh. But he manages to get the plant, and then he frees himself from his rock boots, and then is thrown back up onto the shore, and he survives, and he gets the plant, and he's really excited. And he's like, I'm gonna go try this out on an old person back at Uruk, see how it does, and then I'll try it after that. Classic Gilgamesh move, But then he's like, I'm gonna take a bath. So he goes into this water to kind of bathe and leaves the plant up with his clothes, and a snake comes by and eats it. And then sheds its skin. Presumably, I guess they thought like the snake would renew its youth or something when it sheds its skin. And that's the tale of the origin of that. Kind of reminds me of like Ovid's Metamorphoses a little bit on that one, because it's like this legendary explanation of why an animal does what it does. But yeah, Gilgamesh is like, oh no, and he's really sad, and then he finally resigns himself to, I guess all that was for nothing, and I'm gonna die one day. I'll go back to my city. And he returns to Uruk, and it ends with him again talking about how proud he is of the wall that he built, how it's something that only the original 7 people who brought civilization to mankind could have done something just as good as him, and he lived as a great king for the rest of his life. And that's the end of the story. So, Epic of Gilgamesh was really interesting. It was very interesting to see the Noah story. I guess it's probably Noah is probably a later iteration of that myth, but the flood story, it's just very interesting. All of that like old mythology having crossover across many religions, across many different peoples. the flood myth. It's pretty cool. And to see a different take on it like that. I mean, Noah was said in the Bible to be like living hundreds and hundreds of years. It didn't say that he was immortal, but he definitely like could have seemed immortal to someone like Gilgamesh, who very much sees the world through a child's eyes. I mean, he was not even really aware, it seems like, of the possibility that he could die of old age until Enkidu gets sick and dies. You know, he did know that he could die in battle. He did know that, but it seemed like that was okay with him. He was okay having like a glorious death of renown. But yeah, it's just like everything he sees was basically just instantly, you know, does it does it make me happy? Does it like instantly gratify whatever whim comes across me? Like making the field hockey gear out of the sacred tree. I mean, there's nothing more silly that you could make out of a holy tree than silly field hockey gear that you use to bully the people of your town. You know, like I don't know. So Gilgamesh, it's a great read. I mean, you could sit down and read that in an afternoon. I paced it out over a couple of days, just because it is a little bit weird. You know, old writing for me. I don't like to power through it. It just can be a lot. I like to sit and let it soak in a little bit and think about it. So I only read a little bit each day. But Epic of Gilgamesh, I would recommend. It's a good one, and it's also one of the oldest, if not the oldest, stories committed to writing. So it's pretty cool and foundational for a lot of other things to follow. So check it out. Enkidu's my favorite character for his ridiculously brash plan of going into the underworld and not giving an F about it. Enkidu, Team Enkidu. Yeah. So let me know, who do you like, Gilgamesh or Enkidu? I don't know. Leave a comment. Just leave a comment. Till next time.